What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another Bring the Juice Colts podcast live stream. Thank you all so much for tuning in. You got both of us today, my dear friend Cody and myself, coming to you live on this nice football-filled Sunday evening. Cody, how you doing, my friend?
Not doing bad, man. Not doing bad. How are you doing?
Doing all right, man. Can't complain. Just watching football and having the time of my life. Can't
Yeah.
really complain. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm currently doing on this other monitor is watching the Lions versus the San Francisco 49ers right now. We'll probably end up discussing the last game in this game at parts throughout this live stream. But guys, we're going to go ahead and just have a chill live stream with you all tonight. So shout out to the 71 of you tuning in at this very moment. Be sure to like the stream, guys, if you haven't already. Helps it get out to more and more people. Be sure to comment. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We are pushing for 18,000 subscribers. So I greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. Colts House, how you doing, my friend? How you doing? Reserve Currency, how you doing? Angie Norheim, how you doing as well? Thank you all for tuning in. But, yep, we're here, guys. We're just hanging out. It's just going to be a nice little chill one. I had one of these yesterday, so if you were in here for that one, I highly suggest you go back and rewatch that. We pretty much talked about anything and everything draft related and some other things going on with the team. But, Cody, the Lions are up 14-0 on the 49ers now in the first quarter, man. This is already starting to look like a blowout.
Heck yeah, dude. I am so happy for Lions fans that the Lions are able to hold on because look, I mean, all the misery, man, they've had to go through, 0-16, all that stuff. So I couldn't be happier, man. I wanted the Lions to win. They were kind of my NFC team, when the Colts didn't make it. I was like, all right, I'm rooting for the Lions the rest of the way, just because of all that, and also, man, just Dan Campbell and what he's brought to that Detroit team. Absolutely love that. So yeah, man, I'm hoping that they can hold on. Unfortunately, the Chiefs made it again. So I was hoping that Lamar and the Ravens could do it, but obviously not. But yeah, man, definitely excited for Detroit. And you're right, they just make it look so easy. So easy.
Oh, yeah. Ben Johnson will have about 20 different phone calls that he's going to be getting, I'm sure, once this season is completely over, for sure. But again, guys, we're going to go ahead and just basically, this is a stream here where most of this is just going to come down to whatever you guys want to chat about. So feel free in the comments to give us some ideas of what it is that you guys want us to talk about in the chat below. And we will do our best to try to get to everything that we can. And of course, Cody, the first one that we get from Ashley Hall, who you want at pick number 15. And Cody, listen, I'm gonna hang strong with my stance on Twitter here. I made a stance on it earlier, and I am still 100% on the hype train of if Brock Bowers is there at 15, you take Brock Bowers 9 times out of 10, unless there's somebody else that's just that much crazier than Brock Bowers being at 15. That's just me.
Yeah, man. And I feel like with how many, quarterbacks are going to be taken, how many potential wide receivers are going to be taken, I could see a scenario where he is available there. But you're absolutely right, Derek, because, we looked at these 4 teams who are competing, who are in the AFC and NFC championships. I mean, look at all of them, Derek. I mean, all of them have, what we would say are elite type of tight ends, like every single one of them. It's actually crazy. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, with San Francisco, George Kittle, and then what Sam Laporta did this year as a rookie. Like every single one of them has an elite tight end or a tight end that has played at an elite level. And so I don't think that's a position that, people say we're fine at tight end. And I know, Derek, we just made a video, which will be coming out probably tomorrow, about some second and third year players going into second and third year that are poised to break out. I know we mentioned in there Jelani Woods, who is a name that we still really like. But again, if Brock Bowers is there, even though it's not necessarily a quote unquote need, you know what I mean? Like, you could probably make an argument pass rusher or wide receiver or corner or even safety might even be a bigger need. But again, Derek, if a player like Brock Bowers is there, even if you have Jelani Woods back, it's a playmaker, right? And that's what we've said the Colts need, is playmakers. And so it just makes a lot of sense for me, man. You give Shane Steichen an elite type of talent at tight end, just imagining how much more he can do with this offense and how much more he opens up this offense, because I feel like right now, Derek, with the tight ends you had last year, you felt pretty solid about them, right? You felt solid about what Kylan Granson, gave you. You felt solid about what at times Mo Alley Cox gave you, at times what, Drew Ogletree, Will Mallory gave you. But you still didn't have that number one tight end, did you? You never had that number one guy that teams had to scheme for and made teams worried. And we've seen what the teams are able to do with, those elite tight ends. And also just how helpful will that be for Anthony Richardson, man, to have that type of target at tight end. I just think it's absolutely would be an absolute slam dunk to get a guy like Brock Bowers. It would make a whole lot of sense on all sides. And even though it's not necessarily a need, quote unquote, I do think it would be a huge, huge win for the Colts to get a guy like Brock Bowers. I mean, seriously, can you just imagine what the Colts offense would look like? Like the mismatches with a healthy Jelani Woods and a Brock Bowers. That's crazy, man. That's elite stuff there, potentially.
My thing is, when it comes to the tight end thing, is I have been saying this for the last couple years, Cody, that the tight end position is becoming one of the biggest hidden needs for a team in any offensive system. You need an elite tight end in order to be an elite offense in this league, because every elite offense in the NFL has an elite tight end. I mean, let's talk about it. The 49ers with George Kittle, the Lions with Sam Laporta, the Ravens with Mark Andrews, the Kansas City Chiefs with Travis Kelce. It's gone on forever. Tight ends are such a big commodity in this league. You can never have too many good tight ends, as what we always like to say with this scheme. But I just look at it and say that Bowers is just a guy that immediately elevates you, because he's not just your prototypical tight end. He's a better athlete than most of the tight ends that are in the NFL right now. And he's such a great yard after catch tight end, which is incredible, because I'm like, you can never have too many weapons for Anthony Richardson. And especially if you want Anthony Richardson to not run as much or feel the need to run the football as much, you have to get him weapons to where he doesn't feel like he has to, and he can look down the field. Now, I'll pertain this to a discussion I was having on Twitter earlier, and I told you about it before we went live. And again, guys, we'll make sure to get to more of your questions as we go along. Just be sure to hit that like button, guys. Helps it get out to more people. Be sure to comment. Be sure to subscribe. All that great stuff. But I was looking at it, and people were saying like, oh, the Ballard absolutely needs to go defense first. Like, whatever that may be. Edge rush, cornerback, safety, you have to go with that first. And I would get it if it was the cornerback position and you felt that Brock Bowers wasn't going to make it to you. If he doesn't make it to you by then, and if the top three wide receivers are off the board by then I'm fully on board with taking that. I'm just saying, from a playmaker's perspective, I think that adding a guy like Odunze or Bowers would be a much better immediate impact for Indianapolis than a rookie corner that still, again, has to get acclimated to the NFL. Now, I know your stance, Cody, on edge rush. Do you firmly believe that there is an edge guy in this draft that Indianapolis should be targeting that warrants a pick over Brock Bowers if he's there at 15?
Man, see, that's tough for me because I do feel like there are some guys in free agency that could potentially eliminate this need. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's bound to be at least one of these guys set to hit free agency, whether that's Brian Burns, whether that's Josh Allen, whether that's whoever. There's other guys too. And maybe none of them do. But, I just feel like there could be that potential. And so I am not really on team draft a guy. If you're going edge, if you're addressing edge, I don't really want to draft another guy, at edge. So I probably would say no at this point, although I do think there are some good edges. I know a guy like Jared Verse, a lot of people seem to really like him. And there's a couple other guys as well. Even later on, I know Chop Robinson's a big name that a lot of people have thrown around. I've seen a lot of mock drafts, a lot of indie mock drafts with him in like the early second round or something like that. But for me, I'm more of like, I want an immediate impact guy. You've tried to supplement it when it comes to, drafting guys, and you've had some success, but you've also had some not success, especially getting after the quarterback from your edge. And so, and we've talked about this before, Derek, and I guess I'll bring it up again, is like, there's nothing wrong with changing the way you attack a position. Like, there's nothing wrong with admitting there are certain positions, in Ballard's case, edge rush, where you just can't draft them or develop them for whatever reason. You haven't been able to, you still can't, at least to the level that it needs to be. And so I don't think there's any harm in going out and getting more proven guys for that position, going that veteran route a little bit more, dishing out some more money. Yes. But also, understanding that, like, if this is the position that we find that guy, we don't have to worry about that for a long, long time. And so for me, I think I would say more free agency, Derek. That's kind of the approach where I would go after defense. And then, best player available, obviously. I honestly think, and I know, Derek, this might be controversial, and you might not even agree with me on this. I don't know if you address corner in the first round, because, look at it. You dressed corner last year multiple times. You have Dallas Flowers. You have Kenny Moore. I'm not saying it's not a need, because I do think it is a need. Don't get me wrong. But I do think you've shown the ability, if you're Chris Ballard and you're the Colts, where you found, good, solid to good players in the secondary. You found some of those guys with that potential, not in the first round.
Have you noticed the trend, Cody? Like, the late round picks, the defensive ones seem to hit a lot more for Chris Ballard and his staff than the offense. I would much rather the Ballard attack offense early, where there's bona fide elite players, rather than him doing it later, because it hasn't quite worked out for him in that regard as much as it has defensive wise, because you have just as many late round guys on that defense that are doing great things for you, or even undrafted guys at that, than what you have on early picks in there for you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And you found some guys. And also, Derek, I think there's some deep positions. Like, there's deep wide receivers in this draft where I'm like, okay, you can go get a wide. You found Josh Downs in the third round, for goodness sakes. Like, you've been able to find some guys that can be productive for you. And gosh, I know, like, this is like more of a rarity, but like, look at a guy like Puka Nacua, a late round pick that developed into something. And so for me, I look at it and I just say, hey, defense, I feel like you have a lot of youth in there. Go get some veterans. Go get some guys at different positions in free agency to kind of, solidify that group a little bit, and go best player available, at 15, whether that's Brock Bowers, whether that's a wide receiver, whether that's whatever it is, go that way. Or if you feel like, hey, we feel like we can still get one of our guys, trade down, get some more picks, or if there's a guy you want to trade up for. I know that's something that Ballard really hasn't done a whole lot. But if that's something where you feel like that's what you need to do, go do it, So I am more of the add some more veterans, but also, I do understand, like, you need to add more competition at a few different places. We talked about safety at corner, potentially get another linebacker and some other, another backup defensive lineman, especially a guy that can really strong against the run, because we saw what happened last year, when Grover Stewart was out with that suspension. You really suffered for that. So there are a few, I think, depth moves, but Derek, I mean, you really look at it. I mean, corner and safety, I guess, are the two that you say, hey, probably need to add some more pieces. But Derek, when you think about this defense overall, at least right now, I mean, you have guys that if you went out and played tomorrow, you would say these are our starters. Like you could, and there's like positions where you feel pretty solid about it. Like you feel good about, 3/4 of your defensive line. You feel good. You feel like you have some good players, right? You just are lacking that number one. You feel like you have some good linebackers. I mean, EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin, you feel like you have some good guys there. You've invested some into that secondary. So I just think there needs to be some moves that kind of move the needle a little bit on the defensive side of things. And I think if you do that, that can change a lot for your defense. So to answer your question, that was a long-winded answer by me, but to answer your question, I would probably go best player available. And if that's a guy like Brock Bowers, and if a guy falls like that, you take him and you don't look back, and we've seen Ballard do that in the past, Derek. Like think about Jonathan Taylor. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected the Colts to take Jonathan Taylor in the second round. I remember we were shocked when the Colts went running back. So I'm just saying, like, don't be surprised if, a perceived, not a perceived need that we say necessarily, if the Colts make a selection like that. I wouldn't be shocked at it because he's done it before.
Absolutely agree. Anthony Doe, member for 10 months. What's up, fellas? Happy to catch the live stream. Good to see you in here, my friend. Thank you for tuning in. Ashley's asking, when is AR going to start throwing? He hopes to start throwing by the end of this month. So he said he's supposed to be going down to Jacksonville here shortly to awesome. Finish up his rehab and then be able to start throwing the football again this next month. And I'm sure as soon as we hear about him throwing the football again for the first time since the injury, I'm sure somebody will have that out ready to go for us. So we will be sure to let y'all know. But yeah, from that defensive end perspective, I look at it, Cody, and I mean, you just look at some of the elite pass rushers of the game today, right? Nick Bosa, 2nd overall pick. Myles Garrett, 1st overall pick. Josh Allen, 7th overall pick. One of the only few outliers to the top 5 two outliers to the top 5 is TJ Watt, who was still a 1st round pick, but he was 30th overall. And of course, Trey Hendrickson, and I don't even think he was a 1st rounder. So, I mean, there's a few outliers to the rule, obviously, but the majority of your elite pass rushers in this game are either right where the Colts are at or right above or before that. So it's kind of difficult for me. I just look at it and I say, if you're going to get if you're going to get an elite edge rusher, I'd rather them do it in free agency, even though it's very hard to do that. But I would still rather take the chance on that. But Van City saying Kent Sterling is saying that the Colts should draft a quarterback at 15. Is this a good idea? I'm definitely going to say no. I'm not in the business of saying that. I'm not going to pull a Dan Dockich who says that you need to foresee everything that's going to happen in your future and say that they should have a backup plan in case Anthony Richardson fails. And the only other thing I would say to that, Cody, is if Ballard does make that kind of move, then that clearly shows you he does not have faith in Anthony Richardson. He knows he messed up by not making a move to get CJ Stroud, and therefore he should be fired because he obviously cannot decide on how to get a quarterback here in Indianapolis. So, I mean, that's my way of viewing it.
I fail to see what good that would do. Can you imagine, like, what message are you trying to send to not even Anthony Richardson, but your locker room by drafting a quarterback in the first round twice? No, there's better uses of your resources than doing that. So absolutely not. I don't even know why that idea was even thought of and spoken into existence. But Derek, I think that does bring up a good point, though. Do the Colts address quarterback in the draft at all? Do they go and draft a quarterback on day 3? A guy with talent, a guy with traits that Shane Steichen identifies and says, I want this guy in my room. I want this guy who has these traits, still very undeveloped in those traits, but a guy that we feel like we could groom as kind of our backup quarterback for the future. And I would rather, Derek, I don't know how you feel, but like, I would rather have a young quarterback, if that were to happen again, and obviously knock on wood for that, but like, if that would happen again where there would be an injury, like I'd rather have a young quarterback that you're building around, I would rather do something like that than opposed to a quarterback who we already know what he is. Now, again, that might, make your ceiling a little bit lower or your floor a little bit lower, excuse me. But who knows? Who knows what that guy could be? He's very much an unfinished product. At the end of the
day, though, like it's very, very, very unlikely that you make a Super Bowl with your backup quarterback as the primary thing. Like that's really only been done a few times ever in the Super Bowl era, where a backup quarterback was good enough to be able to take his team to a Super Bowl. And obviously the most recent one being Nick Foles back in 2017. But let's just not act like as if Nick Foles was the ultimate reason why everything was going well for them. They had a really good team in Philadelphia that year. Let's not forget that. I mean, at the end of the day, that's been a lot of people's arguments there, Cody, for why they want Gardner Minshew back. And I'm just like, Gardner Minshew's not going to take you there. That's the problem. Is it like he's not going to take you there? I don't care how much better you make this roster if he can't hit the wide receivers that are already open. Then I don't see what the point in bringing the guy back is. I'd much rather take the chance on a young, like you said, highly talented quarterback and see if you can develop those traits and with Shane Steichen's kind of mold and move along and say, hey, I think that this guy, if we give him a year or two to learn from Anthony, because he plays a little bit like Anthony, he plays well into the system, this guy could be the kind of quarterback that if it push came to shove, he could go out there and do the same kind of offense that I want him to do. And then at the end of the day, we won't have to change much. And I think of quarterbacks like Jordan Travis that would be able to do that. I mean, there's a few others that I'm blanking on currently, but I mean, there's some guys in the quarterbacks that, like, if you wanted to take a 4th, 5th, or 6th round quarterback again, I'm totally down for that, because it would not be another Sam. I don't think it'd be another Sam Ehlinger situation. You'd have other things going on with that.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Derek, but I trust Shane Steichen's evaluation of a quarterback a lot asking than I trust Frank Reich's evaluation of a quarterback. So
totally agree with you there. Yeah. Steve Nevins asking a question here. Which free agents are available that would boost the defensive backfield? Thanks for the show. Go Colts. As far as free agents that would boost the defensive backfield, do you have any names that you know of that would be free agents that you think the Colts would realistically try to go for?
I mean, this is all pretty, at this point, Derek, like, who knows who's getting brought back and who's not getting brought back. But I do have a couple guys. I think one guy that I would really like for Indianapolis. I mean, are we talking more cornerback? Well, first off, are we talking more quarterback or are we talking more safety or both?
Just backfield in general, corner or safety at this point.
Okay, I know Chibote Awuzie is a name that a lot of people have thrown out there. He's kind of a veteran. He's been, around the league a little bit. He's played with Cincinnati. He's 28 years old, so he's a little bit older, brings a little bit of veteran experience in there. That's a name I know a lot of people have thrown out there. Derek, how would you feel about, bringing back Stephon Gilmore? That's a name I know a lot of people have thrown out there. I don't know at this point if you're like, that ship sailed, we're good. I know Rock's still out there, which people are probably moved on from him. I don't know. There's a few different guys.
Here's my thing. Here's my thing with it. I think the problem that you have is Ballard invested a ton of draft capital in this last draft at cornerback.
Sure.
And that makes me believe that they may not be so eager to invest more draft capital into the position. I would think if you're going to go with one, you're going to probably add depth at cornerback in free agency. Now,
sure.
As far as who they get, I know a lot of people are talking L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah,
but L'Jarius Sneed is about to get a $10+ million deal this next year. There's no way that Ballard is going to sign L'Jarius Sneed and also re-sign Kenny Moore. And my guess is he will probably re-sign Kenny Moore before he signs L'Jarius Sneed. Because L'Jarius Sneed does not play where Kenny Moore plays, and Kenny Moore does not play where L'Jarius Sneed plays. So it's a different kind of grouping there. But I don't see the situation where they do that. Now, I think, and you've heard my stance on this several times already, Cody, that I feel the safety room is where Ballard can get a little crazy with the safety room.
Yeah. Do you want me to read off the list? I have a list of guys right here. If you want me to.
Do what you got to do, man.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I was just texting somebody back. All right. So these are a couple guys, and this one's kind of weird. Buda Baker, there's a club option on him. I'm not entirely sure. I've never really heard about that one, so I'm not sure what that means exactly. I would assume Arizona would keep him around. Buda Baker, there was a club option on him when I'm looking at this, so I would assume they just
right now.
Yeah, but okay. So moving on from him, a couple guys at the free safety position. Micah Hyde, I know he's a little bit older. He's 33. He was a guy that I know when he was a free agent before he signed with Buffalo. That was a guy that I was definitely interested in for Indy. Different guys like Antoine Winfield's the big name. I know for a lot of people, he's 25 years old. He's going to cost a lot, but Derek, he would be an absolute monster at free safety. I mean, can you imagine him and Julian Blackmon back there, man? That's an elite duo right there. He would be definitely an option. It's interesting, Derek. Rodney McLeod is a free agent again. Would that be another vet option? I don't know. Maybe. Deshaun, these are just some. I'll just read some other names. Eric Murray, Tashawn Gibson, Cody Davis, Terrell Edmonds, Antoine Winfield, Jonathan Ford, Rodney McLeod, Adrian Amos, or Lohi Gilman. Those are some of the guys at free safety currently.
Yeah, I've been very intrigued by the names of Jeremy Chin and Xavier McKinney. Those are some safeties that I would invest
They're more
into.
Strong safeties. They're listed as strong safeties here.
Yeah, I mean, well, the good thing is with Indy's perception is if you go with Julian Blackmon still, you can move Julian Blackmon to wherever you see fit is the best option for him in that regard. So, I mean, that would be the great thing. If you are the Indianapolis Colts, you could be playing with house money with the Blackmon situation as long as you do re-sign Blackmon. So it will be interesting to see how they approach that. It just would be hard for me to imagine that they would be going with another rookie corner to add to an already group that already saw 3 rookie corners get added last offseason. Unless like one of the, I mean, I'm assuming one of the elite ones is going to be there, but I mean, it depends on how beginning of the draft starts for that. So,
Derek, how would you feel about a guy like Geno Stone, out of curiosity, for the Baltimore Ravens? I mean, he's a guy, dude, he's 24 years old, and I believe he had 8 interceptions this year. 8 interceptions.
I'm looking at his stats right now. 5'11",
I don't think Baltimore lets him out the door.
That's a thick boy at safety right there. Jeez. Yeah, only going to be 25, and this year, yes, 7 interceptions. Wow. That's crazy. That's a lot of good safety
available. You're right, man.
That is crazy. And yeah, clearly this year was by far and away his best season by a long shot. Not only in, the fact that he's started quite a few more games, but I mean, yeah, he definitely had a very big leap from that point on. So, hey, I mean, I would not be mad at it. And, and that's the thing. That's why I think, Cody, that there is going to be a lot of situations where Ballard can do some damage with the defense, man. I mean, that defensive backfield, I'm telling you, he has some opportunities to make some noise in that secondary. I'm wanting him to do that. If he's wanting to shore up the secondary, shore it up in free agency, bro. Seriously. Shore it up in free agency and leave the draft picks to get some elite weapons. Like, that's what you need. I mean, honestly, like, Juju's going to improve. I think Jalen Jones will improve. You'll get Dallas Flowers back, who was playing at an average cornerback level for the time that he was in there. And, I mean, if you keep Kenny Moore, then you're going to be fine. And if you add veteran depth in the safety or cornerback room, then you're going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be an elite secondary, but I definitely think it will be better than what it was. So I think that would be better. I just think I'm still looking in terms of trying to get the best weapon available.
I feel like the one biggest, the biggest issue with the secondary, I mean, or more, maybe not even issue, the most disappointing part of the secondary last year was free safety. I mean, we had expectations, Derek, that Rodney Thomas was going to play at a decent level, right? Or Nick Cross when he came in. We thought somebody would take it this year, and neither of them really did. And that was by far the biggest issue. I mean, how many times, Derek, were there just confusion back there? And obviously the 2 rookie corners, they had their moments up and down, no question. But yeah, it's just that is why I think if you went a big splash and you got a free safety like an Antoine Winfield or somebody like that, that would just change so much about what your team did.
For one, Winfield, I don't see the Buccaneers letting him go. And even if they did, Winfield's going to want one of the highest contracts of any safety in the league. I don't think you have the luxury of spending that kind of money on a cornerback or safety. If you're spending that kind of money, I would rather spend it on a edge rusher than spend it on that.
Sure, but I'm just saying, if you're gonna go big, he would change a lot. Like, he would be the guy. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about some of these edge rushers, because there's a lot of guys here, a lot of edge rushers.
Hey, yo, reserve currency, bro. I'm telling you right, bro, Steichen ain't getting rid of them design runs for AR. He might do less of them, but he ain't getting rid of them completely.
Yeah. There are a ton, Derek, of edge guys. And I don't know how many are going to actually hit the open market, but right now there are a ton of guys who could potentially be hitting the market. A ton of proven guys that you think would be clear upgrades. And some guys who are here that I could legitimately argue, Derek, could be number ones. Like, they have that potential to be number ones. Is there any guy here, as you're looking at some of these edge rushers, that you would say for you, like, if you're going to throw money out, if you're going to go for that big swing at edge, which guy do you want the Colts to go after? Say all or most of them or all of them are available, and you have to choose one. Who's it going to be?
Oh, well, number one is Josh Allen. 100%.
Okay. That's what I thought.
I just don't see a situation where they let that happen. I don't see Jacksonville allowing themselves to let that happen.
Sure.
But if I'm Ballard, I'm throwing a blank check at Josh Allen. Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Sure.
Second for me would be Brian Burns, because the dude's only 25 years old and he's shown you he can get double-digit sacks in a season. I'm perfectly happy with throwing out a good-sized contract for Brian Burns. That's for sure.
Okay. How would you feel? I have a couple other guys here that I feel like there's a lot of potential there. Derek, how would you feel about like a guy like Chase Young or Josh Uche from New England? Either of those guys. Some young guys that have had some good seasons, but for Uche last year just wasn't a good year for him. But for Chase Young, he's still only 24 years old, so he's still extremely young. Right. Any of those guys stand out as maybe not breaking the bank, but they could command a decent amount?
I'm gonna just look at when it comes to this. When you're looking at this, this year for Chase Young, Chase Young being as young as he is, I that would be one of the only ones I would think that I would give a solid nod to. Just because, like you said, Chase Young can still become even more elite. But the problem I have is I don't know how much that injury that he had from beginning, all those injuries he had, what that did to him from a full perspective of like how much more dynamic he can get. The problem you have with Indy is you just don't have an elite edge guy right now. You don't even have a really great edge rusher. You have two good edge rushers and Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye. And we hope that Samson Ebukam can kind of elevate a little bit more and Ebukam can actually be, a really good edge guy, which we think that he can be. But I think that from that perspective, my issue is I am not of the business of Indy should be spending more money to go and get an above average to good player again. I'm not in the business of that. If you are Indy, I am tired of seeing Indy only get average to above average edge guys. I want Indy to have an elite one, just like what you have said. And it is very hard to get an elite one. There's very few of them that are in the NFL, and they very rarely hit the market, and your chances of drafting one are slim to none. So it's very difficult for me to sit right now and suggest that Indy has a good chance of being able to actually get one. So I'm just sitting here and telling myself, if you don't think that these guys are going to be elite, then there's just no point in adding to the group. Like, seriously, you have the guys right now that you have. I'd rather just then go and get the best secondary guys that you can get to just help counterbalance the edge rush or just the pass rush in general and just try to counterbalance that. The best thing you can do if you have a good pass rush, which Indy does, they don't have a great pass rush, they just have a good pass rush, then you need to have a really good secondary. And right now, Indy has neither. So which one is easier to fix? I think right now it's easier to fix the secondary from what we have right now than getting an elite edge rusher than what we don't have right now.
Yeah, edge rushers don't grow on trees, Derek. We know this. I feel like with same with quarterbacks. Quarterbacks don't grow on trees. Edge rushers don't grow on trees. And so you need to invest serious capital into those positions, right? And that's what it took for the Colts to get their guy with Anthony Richardson. They had to invest a top 5 draft pick into him. And I think that's what's got to be, when it comes to edge, whether that, maybe not draft compensation, but financially committing to something like that and getting a guy like Brian Burns who, despite some bad situations that he's faced in Carolina, has consistently been a really, really good pass rusher. He had 12 and a half sacks in 2022. He had 8 sacks last year. And he's consistently had, Derek, you look at it, like 2023 was his worst season since his rookie season. He had 9 sacks and 12 and a half. So, and he's only 25. So I think if there's any time, this has to be the time, because you mentioned it. You have a good defensive line. Like, I'm not saying this unit's completely devoid of talent. It's not. You've invested a lot. There's some guys that you like in there. But Derek, yeah, you're right. I feel like you have like a lot of the base down for your defensive line, but you need that guy that's going to take you over the top. And if you can get that guy, which if either any of these guys are available, Indy needs to be on it. And if you get that guy
100%.
that can truly strike fear into the hearts of offenses and can wreck and change games, like, I just think that'll change so much in what you do defensively. Because we've seen, you talked about, like, Ballard's actually been able to find some, like, decent DBs without a major significant investment a lot of times, So I feel like you said, which one's easier? Okay, if it's a secondary, why not go after the one that's more difficult and fill it with an elite talent? You know what I mean? Like, that just makes sense to me, is like going and filling an elite need with elite talent, and then addressing the other positions while there's still needs, going in and addressing that in other ways. So that's what makes sense to me as far as it goes for the edge position.
Terry, I want to address this comment because it's a little bit incorrect. The stat I'm not disagreeing with, they obviously did set a franchise record for sacks in a season. Yes. But if you looked at the numbers other than just the sacks, yes, they were 5th this season in sacks, but in overall pressures and effective pass rush rating, Indianapolis was 22nd in overall pressures throughout the season. So actually, yes, they did get sacks, but the problem is you weren't consistently getting pressure on the quarterback. That's like saying, one week, we didn't touch the quarterback. The next week, we sacked him 4 or 5 times. The next week, we sacked him once. Not good enough. Next week, we sacked him 5 more times. The next 2 weeks, we sacked him none. The next 2 weeks after that, we got 3 or 4 sacks. Like, yes, some weeks, Indy had some really good sack numbers, but then there were some weeks where they just didn't do anything. And that's the problem you have with Indy, is you don't have a guy that consistently every single game, every other snap, dominates the opposing line of scrimmage. And that is where the Indianapolis Colts need help on that defensive line. And that's where it gets difficult, man, because there's just not a lot of good ones out there.
Yeah, right.
Cody, I want to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick because I find it fun. So let's see here for a second. I want to do something. We're going to kind of take a trip down memory lane here.
Oh boy.
When did Ryan Grigson become the GM of the Colts? What year was that?
I already know the
2012, right?
So he came in after the 2011 season.
Yep, Grigson 2012 draft picks. We're just going to go ahead and hop into this, man. So, okay, so I just want to remind you kind of like what happened throughout the years, okay? And I just want to say this because everyone is all up on their high horse about Ballard still. Just to give you a general idea of what we're dealing with here, okay? So that first draft that he had, obviously he had Andrew Luck, Kobe Fleener, Dwayne Allen, T.Y. Hilton, Josh Chapman, Vic Ballard, Levon Brazil, Justin Anderson, Tim Fugger, and Chandler Harnish. Now, when you look at that draft class, clearly Ryan Grigson did a great job of bringing in two very good quality starters. I lost internet for a sec. I'm going to ask again because I didn't hear your response. What do you think about Nate Wiggins? One of the best cornerbacks in the draft class, and if we get him, I'd be very happy.
Derek,
Yes.
2012. I got you.
Oh my gosh, he has the harness jersey.
You know why I have the harness jersey?
What position did he even play?
He was quarterback. He played for Northern Illinois. He went to my high school. I played with his brother. His brother was the quarterback, and I played offensive line and defensive line. And so, yeah, when he got drafted, like our small town, like we're going crazy, right? Because like nobody from our school has ever gotten like drafted before. Yeah. And so it was just like a really cool moment. So I've always had that jersey. So yeah, it's just funny. I had that I knew I still had it somewhere. So
that's a cool story. I think the closest that I've ever gotten to like there being an NFL player near my town, Taylor Decker, actually for the Lions, their left tackle, actually played at a Dayton area school, Vandalia Butler, who played in my conference. He played there and then obviously went to Ohio State and then ended up with the Lions. So Vandalia Butler is only like a half hour away from where I went to school, and we played them every year with the conferences. And he was he left for Ohio State, I think the year before I started playing high school football. So I'm glad I didn't have to go up against him. I knew a guy that played for our team that did, because he was a year older than me, and he said it was the worst experience of his life having to go up against him. But that's pretty funny. So let's go ahead and move forward here, man. So 7 selections in 2013, right? Bjorn Warner, Hugh Thornton, Khaled Holmes, Montori Hughes, John Boyett, Kerwin Williams, and Justice Cunningham. Now, the only reason I know the first two is because Warner, I know a lot of people hate him. Hugh Thornton was actually a somewhat decent player for us at the time, but never ended up being anything else. So again, 2013, you can't really name anyone that did anything good of sorts. In 2014, the Colts only had 5 draft picks. They had Jack Mewhort, Dante Moncrief, Jonathan Newsom, Andrew Jackson, and Ulrich John. Now, I'll give the credit to the Jack Mewhort trade or draft pick because Mewhort was actually a good player. Just got hit with injuries a lot. Dante Moncrief was only relevant because of Andrew Luck. That's blatantly obvious.
Hashtag feed Moncrief, man. I remember those days.
I remember that hashtag.
Real quickly, before you move on to, I remember Hugh Thornton. I remember Hugh Thornton, Derek, for a couple reasons. I'm going to show you one reason why I remember Hugh Thornton. I'll share my screen here for you. Hang on a second. Sorry.
It's all good. I want to see this.
Right there.
That's hilarious. I love that picture.
And then cool. Number 2.
I've never noticed that before.
Yeah. And then number 2, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was back in my early days, man. So I've been on Twitter for a long time. Okay. I did this is for people who I don't even know if they'll remember this or if they followed me at that point. Indiana sports coverage back in the day, Grant Afseth and myself, we did it. And I remember I talked to Hugh Thornton. I think I did it through like Twitter DMs or something and did like a question, like Q&A with him for like the website. That was pretty cool. He was a cool guy. He might still follow me, actually. He follows one of the accounts from all the way back in the day, but he was always a chill guy. So I always remember Hugh Thornton. Nice. He was a good guy.
And then in the 2015 draft, okay, this is where it starts getting spicy, all right? The Colts selected Philip Dorsett at 29. We all remember that draft pick, right? DeJon Smith, Henry Anderson, Clayton Geathers, David Perry, Josh Robinson, Amarlo Herrera, and Denzel Good. Now
there's
Henry
so
Anderson
much in that draft class. There is so much in that draft class.
There was so much in that draft class that he missed, bro. Even on that first pick, I don't know what he missed, but I remember the whole draft process of my brother and I being like, why in the hell are we drafting Philip Dorsett? Why? And
okay.
I mean, that's
I'm gonna pull these up. That's hilarious. Okay, so I remember where I was when the Colts drafted Philip Dorsett. I was in college. You probably were too at that point. Maybe you were still in high school. But I remember I was in college watching it with a few friends. And that was a year. My friend is a Steelers fan. And they drafted Artie Burns, and he literally flipped out. He was just like, God dang it, no, I don't want this guy. He was like freaking out. And he like stormed out. But I remember I was literally like sitting in the room, and I saw that, and I was so angry. I remember I was like sitting on the mattress, and I was like punching the mattress. So I was like, are you freaking kidding me? It's like Landon Collins. That was the guy we all wanted. You remember that? Landon Collins.
Oh, yeah, Landon Collins. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted Landon Collins, man, and I was so mad because I'm like, why? We literally just signed Andre Johnson, and we have T.Y. Hilton, and we have like all these other guys. Why do we need a fourth wide receiver? I was so mad at that. I remember that. Man.
Yeah, that is another hit and miss draft. So far, Cody, we've only had one hit of a draft class, and that was when we got Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton. Now, the infamous 2016 final draft class of Ryan Grigson. The final one. And this one has some bangers. Okay. So this, Cody, and ironically enough, it starts out with his the only remaining player of the Indianapolis Colts from the Ryan Grigson era, and that is Ryan Kelly at 18. Yep. And that was one of only 3 great draft picks by Ryan Grigson in his stretch. Now, to follow, TJ Green was in there. We remember that one.
The fastest safety ever.
LaRaven Clark at number 3. Dude. Hassan Ridgeway, who I actually thought was actually not terrible. Antonio Morrison.
Dude, Joe was the guy that barked at the dog. He barked at the dog. Do you remember that?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
They're like, he's like, the dog barked at me, so I barked at it back.
Joe Haig was in there. Now, I will honestly give credit to that. Joe Haig actually was a very solid offensive lineman for Indianapolis. He actually wasn't
Can I read
bad.
it? Can I read this? Can I read this thing?
Yeah, sure.
I need to read this thing about Antonio Morrison. Okay. This was July 21st, 2013. Florida Gators linebacker Antonio Morrison has been arrested for the second time in 5 weeks. Okay, so right there, there's a lot right there. Okay, he's already been arrested twice in 5 weeks. Okay, so this time for allegedly barking at a police dog and resisting arrest, and will miss at least the first 2 games of the season after being suspended for the team on Sunday. I might not be able to read this without laughing. Okay. Okay. Morrison's defense was the dog barked first, according to police report. That's unbelievable.
That man was on something. You know it. You know that man was on something in that.
I remember. Okay, I don't know if this was him or not. I remember one player. Maybe this was. Okay, so that was 2016, so maybe it wasn't. I think it was Kelvin Shepard. Do you remember that name? That was the guy the Colts traded Jerry Hughes for.
No.
Jerry Hughes. Do you remember Jerry Hughes?
Yeah, I remember Jerry Hughes. Yeah.
So they traded Jerry Hughes for him, and he was horrible. He was just terrible. I remember this. But I remember specifically in that Kansas City Chiefs game, the comeback game. Do you remember that? Whenever I think LaRon Landry, there's a name, LaRon Landry. He went to make a tackle and he got hurt. I think he got a concussion or something. And I remember Kelvin Shepherd comes up to him while he's on the ground and starts hitting his head, celebrating. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're literally going to give him a worse concussion. Oh man, that was crazy, man.
And then just to end the misery here, Trevor Bates and Austin Blythe were the final two picks. And then January 21st of next year, Ryan Grigson was relieved of his duties.
Thank goodness.
So ending the prosperous draft process that is a draft guru that is him. So
he was a genius.
Let's just kind of talk about Ballard's first couple here. Why not?
That's good.
First draft for Chris Ballard gets Malik Hooker, Quincy Wilson, Terrell Basham, Zach Boehner, Marlon Mack, Grover Stewart, Nate Hairston, and Anthony Walker Jr. Now, I will say, while only one of those guys is still with the Colts, Anthony Walker is still a really good player in this league, and Malik Hooker is still a good player in this league. He has found a new home with the Dallas Cowboys. And Terrell Basham's even still been a backup guy from here to there. So, I mean, that's something. But, bro, I'll tell you what, the 2018 draft, though, Ballard had almost more all-pro level players in the 2018 draft than what Grigson had in his entire 5 seasons drafting for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, that's crazy. Just how on a whole nother level Chris Ballard is when it comes to drafting.
Yeah, and I think
people want to complain about that.
Even though 2017 you look at it and you say it's not a great draft, overall wasn't probably a great draft for Indy. I mean, it still got, quality minutes out of Marlon Mack, quality minutes out of, Malik Hooker was a starter. I know he didn't really pan out with Indy, but he's still playing. Anthony Walker's still playing. He had some quality minutes. Terrell Basham's still playing. So a good chunk of those guys are still in the league. The guys the Colts drafted, a lot of them, they flamed out very quickly, if you remember that. Very few of those guys actually legitimately stayed in the league and played well and had good careers. None of them really did. I don't really remember any of them having great careers. I mean, Grigson's bread and butter was 2012 because, he had got Andrew and T.Y. I think T.Y. is probably his best pick he's ever had, in terms of value-wise and a find. But, yeah, I mean, it's just wild to look back on that.
Yep. It was just one of those things that Ballard didn't have the luxury of a franchise quarterback. Grigson did. And look at what happened. So
let's keep going. Let's go 2018. Let's look at them. We got to finish this up.
Okay. 2018. Yeah, we'll finish this live stream up with this topic. So 2018. Quentin Nelson, Darius Leonard, Braden Smith, Kamoko Toure, Tyquan Lewis, Naheem Hines, Reese Fountain, Jordan Wilkins, Deion Kane, Matthew Adams, and Zaire Franklin. So Quentin Nelson, one of the best offensive linemen of this generation. Darius Leonard, who before his injuries was putting up numbers that no linebacker in the history of football has ever put up. Braden Smith, who when he's healthy and playing, he plays at an all-pro level. Naheem Hines was a really great player when Phillip Rivers was there. And then you have Zaire Franklin, who has set the franchise record in tackles twice and almost leads the NFL in tackles over the last several years. So, I mean, talk about a 2018 draft right there, dude. Holy cow.
Yeah, that makes you sad, man, because you're like, man, if Shaq would have been healthy, stayed healthy, what could he have been? But you still, like, you look at it now. I mean, Quentin Nelson's still on the team. Braden, both these guys, Quentin and Braden, still guys playing at a high level. Taekwon's still on the team. I believe that if the whole crap wouldn't have happened last year, Nyheim Hines would still be on the team. That he's still a good player, like he is, but I don't blame him for wanting to get out after all the crap that was last year. And he ended up getting Zach Moss for it, so it actually kind of worked out. And then Reese Fountain, obviously that one that was unfortunate. He had some injuries, just never really panned out. I always loved Jordan Wilkins, man. I don't know how you feel. I always loved what Jordan Wilkins gave Indy.
Oh,
I
yeah.
felt like he was
always a really
player.
good backup running back. He was never
as dynamic as Marlon Mack, but he was always so darn solid. I just loved what he brought.
He's like what Zach Moss is right now,
Yeah. And then obviously Zaire, that might be the steal of the draft for Ballard ever. Like, holy
Zaire
cow.
Franklin.
Yeah, 7th round pick, and he's broke the franchise record in tackles twice. That's crazy.
100%. Let's move on. Let's keep investing in some decent draft picks here.
This is where it kind of gets rough.
2019, he comes back down to earth here. 2019, we have Kwity Paye, Dio Odengbo.
Nope, you're in 2020, Derek, or you're in
2021. Oh, hold on a second. Why am I seeing this?
2019 Rock.
Now I got it. Here we go. Rock Yassin with that first one. Ben Banigou. That was an interesting one. Paris Campbell there in that second round. Bobby Okereke. Kari Willis. Marvell Tell. EJ Speed. Gary Green, and that was it. So just looking at this one, Rock Yassin, still a player in this league, but he's not had a great career so far. Ben Banigou, I don't even know what he's up to nowadays. Paris Campbell, I've felt bad for Paris Campbell. He's had a lot of injury problems going into the NFL. Bobby Okereke, we know how great of a player he was. Obviously, went to free agency and ended up going to the Giants. Kari Willis was a really good player until he decided to leave the NFL altogether. Marvell Tell didn't really pan out. EJ Speed, again, this was the one that everyone was like, who is this guy? Where has he come from? But was that athletic freak that was just absolutely insane. And you now see where EJ Speed is. I told people that, I mean, he's a guy that I felt was going to be a starter in this league. And I told a lot of people that, and I got a lot of people to believe, and that's what he ended up being. So, I mean,
it's great.
Not a great draft there, Cody, from all intents and purposes, but by far still better than some of Ryan Grigson's.
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry, Derek.
It's all good.
But yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, you still, at the end of the day, like, you got guys like Bobby Okereke. He was such a good player for you. Paris, when he was healthy, Rock was a solid player. EJ Speed's really the only guy that you would say, you nailed it. You know what I mean? Bobby maybe as well, but yeah, not as great of a draft for Chris Ballard, that's for sure.
But yeah, I mean, every GM has these drafts, so it wasn't like this terrible where you had no players that lasted beyond like their rookie contracts or anything. So, and again, like, if you were in the situation this year where Bobby was still on your team, I think you re-signed him, Derek. I think it was just a weird situation last year with kind of a log jam at wide linebacker, and you didn't know what Leonard's status was at this time. But yeah, it's unfortunate part about the business, but yeah, I think it was a solid draft. You got some quality minutes out of a lot of these guys, but yeah, nothing close to 2018.
Yeah. And then you have the 2020 draft. Wide receiver Michael Pittman. And then you got Jonathan Taylor. And then you have Julian Blackmon. Then you had quarterback Jacob Eason. Then you had Danny Pinter. And then you had Robert Windsor. And then you had Isaiah Rogers. You had Desmond Patman. And you had Jordan Glasgow. Now, Glasgow got traded away, did he not?
He got hurt, I think. And he got waived, I'm pretty sure.
Not re-signing him?
He just got hurt, and I don't remember. They just kind of waived him, and they traded for Grant Stewart, so it all worked out. I feel like you traded the long-haired guy for a long-haired guy, so there you go.
Yep. So again, this was easily Ballard's second greatest draft so far that we know of. You didn't
have a first-round pick. You could throw in DeForest Buckner. That was technically your first-round pick that year.
Yeah, that was technically your first-round pick. So yeah, if you want to include that. You then got DeForest Buckner in there. So you got an all-pro in a defensive tackle, potential all-pro and wide receiver. You have an all-pro running back. You have a potential all-pro at safety. And then you got some backups in the offensive side of things. Isaiah Rogers was going to be your number one corner this year if he didn't decide to gamble it all away. And Glasgow was a fantastic special teams player for you when he was playing. So, I mean, 2020 was a fantastic draft class for Chris Ballard there.
And I think that's why you look at it, Derek, and you see how many, how many guys that you're like, we need to re-sign them because of how good of a draft this was. You mentioned, Michael Pittman, your number one wide receiver, Jonathan Taylor, number one running back, Julian Blackmon, one of your best, your best safety, DeForest Buckner, that speaks for itself. And, Isaiah Rogers would have been your number one corner. So, I mean, you look at that, Derek, and you have out of this, if you want to count Buckner, you have 5 guys that probably would have started for you. You really do. And you could potentially throw in Danny Pinter because he started a little bit. So you have 6 guys from that draft class that played significant snaps for you and at certain points played at high levels. So, I mean, that's a fantastic draft. Absolutely. Definitely a nice bounce back from 2020 or 2019, excuse me.
And then 2021, you have Kwity Paye, Dio Adangbo, Kylan Granson, Sean Davis, Sam Ellinger, Mike Strawn, and then Will Fries. So you now have your starting edge guy, you're a backup defensive lineman, a backup tight end, and a starting right guard for you and Will Fries. So overall, not a great draft here, Cody, but it's certainly far from a terrible one.
Yeah, and not to the degree of 2019, but it still is disappointing because especially with Kwity Paye, I think that's the one that kind of brings it down a little bit. Is like he just hasn't been the player you hoped he would be. He hasn't been that number one edge guy, and that's just the unfortunate part about it is he just hasn't done that for you, and it's a bummer. It really does stink that you didn't have the opportunity there, with Kwity Paye to have him ascend to that next level. And I think it's a big reason why we're debating: do you pick up a 5th-year option or not? And at this point, I'd probably say no, Derek. I probably wouldn't. But you do look at it, and there are a number of guys here. Dio, like you talked about, even though he's a backup, I mean, he's been really coming on. He's really been having some good years. Kylan Granson, he's been kind of that backup / starting tight end right around there. He's been solid. He's not been anything crazy, but he's been solid. And then you mentioned, Will Fries. He's your starting right guard this year. So, not as bad as 2019, but definitely not as good as, 20, I would say 20, certainly not 2018 or 2020. I don't know, Derek. I'd probably put it above 2017. So I'd probably say this is his 3rd best draft. If you're talking about 2018, 2020, and then 2021, that's probably what I would say.
Okay. 2022, you have Alec Pierce in the 2nd round. You have Jelani Woods in the 3rd round, Bernard Ryman in the 3rd round, Nick Cross in the 3rd round, Eric Johnson in the 5th, Andrew Ogletree in the 6th, Curtis Brooks in the 6th, and Rodney Thomas the 2nd in the 7th. So you have one of your wide receivers here, Cody, and a lot of this is still way too soon to figure out what this draft class is made of yet. But Alec Pierce, wide receiver on this team, Jelani Woods, who we think could be the number one. Bernard Ryman, your left tackle of the future, we presume. Nick Cross hopefully has a chance to increase his role. And from all accounts, Rodney Thomas could be a solid backup safety for you going forward. So again, not stacking up to the 2020 or 2018 draft class, but it's certainly far from his worst.
Yeah, and you got a premium position. You figured out a premium position, which is huge. And that's probably why I maybe even put it ahead of the previous draft, just because Bernard Ryman stepped up and has been one of the best left tackles in the NFL in 2023. And I think that maybe swings the pendulum for me a little bit more than in 2021. And so, yeah, I mean, but you look at this group outside of Ryman right now, Derek, it's a lot of potential. There's not a lot of production from this group yet. But again, this is still a group that's only going into year number 3. So they still have a lot to prove. But, definitely the guys in the first 3 rounds, you had a decent amount of them, and, there's been some potential from every single one of them. So you feel good about it. But, you still need to see them another year and see what they can prove.
1 second here, bud.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, and then the last draft that we talked about, Richardson with that first pick, Juju Brents, Josh Downs, Blake Freeland, Adebawari, Darius Rush, Daniel Scott, Will Mallory, Evan Hall, Titus Leo, Jalen Jones, and Jake Witt. A lot of picks there, Cody, but you think Anthony Richardson could potentially be the quarterback of the future. You think you might have found your new number 1 corner in Juju Brents. You have a really solid wide receiver in Josh Downs. You got some tackle help here. And then you had some safety depth that I think that we're looking forward to in Daniel Scott. Will Mallory could be a great tight end piece for you going forward. And Jalen Jones could be a great depth piece going forward. I think this one, Cody, is definitely the 3rd best draft that Ballard has had so far as the Colts GM. And I honestly think it could potentially move up to being it could end up being the number 1 when it's all said and done if Anthony Richardson ends up becoming what we all think he could end up becoming.
It all depends on Anthony Richardson, right? If he can become that franchise quarterback, boom, that's number 1. Because that's the most important position, right? So, yeah, I mean, this is way too early to judge this class. There's a lot of injuries this last year. Let's just see him another year. Some of these young guys played a lot, Derek. Actually, it's kind of crazy how many of these guys played significant roles for this team. Guys that you didn't necessarily expect. Guys like you mentioned, Jalen Jones, even to some degree, Will Mallory, Blake Freeland, like some guys that you didn't necessarily expect to start and play significant amount of snaps for you their rookie seasons. They ended up doing that. So again, you like what you have in a lot of these different guys. You obviously love what you saw from Richardson. When Brents was healthy, you liked what you saw from him for the majority of the time. And then Josh Downs, I mean, the stats speak for themselves. He was one of the best rookie receivers in the NFL. So, yeah, a really good class overall and a lot of picks to boot. So we haven't even seen like half this draft class, Derek, because half of them were hurt last year. So I'm intrigued with this one. Really intrigued.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for this one, guys. We've been streaming for a little over an hour here. Appreciate everybody who is tuning in. But again, guys, be sure to hit that like button on the way out. Greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.